Oh, yeah. Nothing keeps me.
I wish I could say that.
Oh, yeah. My mother was like that, and I thought, that must be odd that I'm the same. And my brothers have told me the same thing for them. Nothing keeps them. I think it's just genetic.
Sweet. 10-4.
I don't read the emails.
It went well. It went very good. Very, it hurts because I'm not taking painkillers.
That's what they're for.
Well, I know, but I'm not into taking that, so. People are really bad.
And some people.
What's up, sir? Hey,
Yeah.
It's not as chilly with the air blowing down your back all over here.
You do that drawing very nicely.
Yeah, it took me a little while, but, you know, it was 15-20 minutes.
Color pencils. Using color pencils.
Absolutely. I'm the master of copy and paste.
Words.
I don't know. I've not heard that. That's interesting. Thanks.
Come on in, ladies and gentlemen. It's about time for us to get started. We're in chapter 4, starting chapter 4 in the workbook, and it is entitled Dinosaurs, Friend or Foe for the Christian. Before we actually get started in the lesson, we'll ask Kurt if he would to lead us in word of prayer.
Shall we pray? Kind and gracious Heavenly Father, thank thee for another wonderful day that you have blessed us with. Thank you for the talents that we have, Father, blessing us so richly. May we continue to rightly divide the word with each other and spread it in our communities. The troubles around the world, Father, we ask that peace will soon reign and be with world leaders. Let's continue prayers for Jan, be with Stacy, and others, a number who are ill, give them a speedy recovery. As we go about this study, may we learn more of thy word, apply to our lives, and teach others. Forgive us of our sins, and ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
As I have mentioned before, I'm not a scientist. So as we go through these things, I will not be approaching these from a scientific standpoint. But this lesson is about dinosaurs, and when you start studying about dinosaurs, there are just all kinds of directions that you can go with that study. But we're going to try to just kind of hit the surface of a lot of things, actually, because we just don't have time to go into all of it. But what do you think? Did they really exist? Was there actually such a thing as a dinosaur that roamed the earth at one time?
Yeah.
Well, they dug up too much stuff for me. They were here.
Yeah, there's some people that don't think they existed, but I'm with you. They're just overwhelming evidence, that they were here at one time. And wouldn't surprise me for one of these things to come wandering out of the Amazon rainforest or somewhere one of these days. I wouldn't doubt that there's probably a few of them still out there. But I think the evidence is just undeniable that they did at one time roam the earth in great numbers. They're fascinating animals. I think just about every little boy, and probably a lot of little girls too, I can't speak from that standpoint, but I know a lot of little boys were fascinated with dinosaurs, and probably even scared somewhat of dinosaurs. One of the earliest nightmares that I can remember, and it was from the time I was 5 years old or maybe a little bit younger. I guess I had watched a movie about dinosaurs on TV or something, but I got stepped on by a brontosaurus. Scared me to death. And it's one of those dreams that kind of stuck with you through all the years. So, just kind of fascinated with these things, and a lot of little boys and girls are. They're fascinated by the pictures that they see of them, by the books that they read about them, about the movies and the cartoons that are made about them. You see dinosaurs everywhere, and a lot of times it is related to the kids, to get their attention. Our grandson, mine Paige's grandson, Red, we've got one. He's 5 years old, and it wasn't too long ago that he was running around with little dinosaur diapers on and little dinosaur nighties. And before he could speak, before he could ever say a word, he could roar. And we said it was, he was roaring like a dinosaur, so that kind of earned him the name T-Ret, and instead of Ret, kind of like T-Rex. So he still gets called T-Ret on a regular basis today. But I think one of the reasons that dinosaurs are so fascinating is because we have enough general information about them to know a little bit about them, but still leave a lot to the imagination. Got a general idea of what they look like. Got a general idea of what they ate. But you go beyond that and how they interacted with each other. Whether you could have had one as a pet, if you lived at the same time with them. All these different things kind of left to the imagination. So there's a lot of fascination there. Now, why would it be important in a classroom setting like this for us to study dinosaurs? Anybody? Why is it a good idea in a Bible classroom setting, from that standpoint to study dinosaurs?
So we'll be able to answer or talk to people who maybe believe in evolution and not in God. No answer to that.
They are absolutely tied to the evolutionist timeline, aren't they? To that false timeline that the evolutionists have, putting them back, starting I think 250 million years ago, on up to around 165 million years ago, or 65 million years ago, whatever it was, that these dinosaurs evolved through that process, and it's tied to it. So it's important for us to do that so that we can refute some of the claims made by evolutionists, some of those false claims. But I'm thinking that probably most of us, and hopefully all of us, are grounded enough in the scriptures that we're not going to be shaken off of that Genesis narrative, the narrative of creation and how things took place and how God made the heavens and the earth. And I'm pretty sure that I never would be shaken off of that. I don't care how many times a scientist comes up and tells me that these dinosaurs lived millions of years before us, or how many scientists tell me that. I'm just not going to, I'm not going to be shaken off of Genesis 1 and 2. And I don't think you would be either. But we've got another big reason that we need to be studying dinosaurs in a setting like this. And that's our children and our grandchildren. Our children and our grandchildren are being bombarded with this theory of evolution on a daily basis from all different angles. But one of the biggest things, one of the biggest avenues that they use is dinosaurs, because they realize that our children are fascinated with dinosaurs. So they keep hammering away day after day, sometimes multiple times a day, at our children with this theory of evolution through the avenue of dinosaurs. Any comments from anybody to any of that? Just a couple of examples of how they are being bombarded. This is a National Geographic book. Now, if you look at it, look at the title of it. Little Kids' First Big Book of Dinosaurs. So who's this directed towards? Well, if you go to Amazon, you'll see this is literally directed towards little kids, ages 4 to 8. Ages 4 to 8. This little book of dinosaurs. Now, if you look on Amazon, you'll see that this got almost 14,000 reviews. And it has a 5-star review, which is pretty impressive when you've got that many reviews. But the problem is, it is just wrong. It's just wrong. It is being, page 6 of that book, it tells us that dinosaurs lived on Earth. It tells our children dinosaurs lived on Earth a very long time ago, before there were any people. The very next page tells our children, the ones who this book is directed at, because dinosaurs lived so long ago, before there were humans, there are no photographs of them. So we see this coming up time and time again. As you go through that book, you'll see references to dinosaurs being millions and millions of years old, over and over and over again. They are attacking our children with this. So it's important that we have an understanding, of what's going on, at least have a decent understanding of the timeline and how evolution does not fit in, and how evolution, or how dinosaurs do not fit in with the theory of evolution, but how we all lived here at the same time. Now, this next one was kind of surprising to me. Cat in the Hat. Remember Dr. Seuss? Well, Dr. Seuss didn't actually write this one, but his character, the Cat in the Hat, is being used along in this book, along with some of the other characters that went with it. And this is one of their books that is called a non-fiction book. The Oh Say Can You Say? Oh Say Can You Say Dinosaur? I can't say it. Oh Say Can You Say Dinosaur? And it's written in that kind of rhyme, like you think of those Dr. Seuss books. So it's one of those things that's being, directed towards our children. I think this is page 4, page 1. It says, I'm the cat in the hat. You have met me before. Today I will speak of the great dinosaur. Dinosaurs lived on the earth long ago, before you and me. So how do we know? So we see even the cat in the hat is attacking them with this idea that they did not live at the same time as the dinosaurs. That human beings and dinosaurs did not live together. The theory of evolution. If you turn over to the glossary at the end of this one, where it has the definition of dinosaur, it says dinosaurs. I know that's probably real small print. I'll read it. Dinosaurs meaning terrible lizards. This is the name of the large group of reptiles that lived 210 million years ago. Most dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago. Now that's the cat in the hat. Okay? And there are a host of other books and movies and cartoons that are pushing this very same message. So we need to be able to help our children defend themselves against this. Any comments or any questions from anybody? Okay, it's not just in the books, it's not just in the movies, it's not just in the cartoons, it's in our schools, it's in the public schools especially, it's in our schools of higher education, our institutions of higher education. This false theory of evolution is pushed as fact over and over and over again. So for no other reason, we need to study something like this so we can help our children, we can help our grandchildren to stand up and be able to fight off this bombardment of these lies that Satan is attacking them with. Anything else? Okay. So what we're going to try to do in this lesson is look at a few things. We're going to try to determine whether or not man and dinosaur lived together. See what the evidence says. We're going to look at the fact and see if dinosaurs are actually mentioned in the Bible. And then we're going to talk about what happened to the dinosaur. Now, that's this week and next week kind of combined. So we're going to go through this and look at some of these things and see if we can come up with some truth about these dinosaurs. So, did they live together? Did we live with them at some point?
Yes.
Did human beings live with them?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely we did. Absolutely. Now the evolutionist would say absolutely not. He would say absolutely not. There were 65 million years that separated man from the dinosaurs. There was no way that they could have lived together. That they came into existence about 250 million years ago and went extinct about 65 million years ago, and somewhere around 6 million years ago, some kind of ape-like creature started to take its first steps, and that's what we evolved from. So, no way that we lived together. On page 47 in our lesson, he quotes an article from January of 1993 in National Geographic. This is what it says. It says, no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur. Now, that's a pretty bold statement. And that's a very definitive statement. No human being has ever seen a live dinosaur. He goes on in the rest of that paragraph there on page 47. He says, the United States Geological Survey asserts on their website, did people and dinosaurs live at the same time? No. After the dinosaurs died out, nearly 65 million years passed before people appeared on the earth. Now, what that says and what that means is, and the evolutionists understand this, if we could ever prove that humans and dinosaurs lived together, then that destroys their premise for the theory of evolution. That destroys that evolutionary process that they put so much faith in, if we could prove that they lived together. So that's kind of what we're going to be looking to do here. We're going to be looking at the evidence and see what it actually proves. So we know what the evolutionist believes, right? No way we live together. So what does the Bible say about it? what does the Bible say when it comes to men and dinosaurs living in the same time? I think it's pretty plain. I think the scriptures are pretty plain that they did live at the same time because they were created the very same day we were, on the sixth day. Now we read most of Genesis chapter 1 Sunday morning, but if you would turn over to Genesis 1 and verse 24. Genesis 1 and verse 24, we're going to read a few verses here. Before we started that, any comments or questions?
Well, what's published in here right now is already a little outdated. Most recently, they have discovered some more digs with man's footprint in stone alongside dinosaur bones. So that shoots National Geographic right down the tube.
Yeah, but you know, things like that they found before, and they always come up with some excuse or some kind of way to dismiss it. So they're not going to be shaking off that narrative. You know, they say that, but then when the evidence comes up, they dismiss it. Anything else? Okay, Genesis 1 verse 24, it says, "Then God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind." Now this is talking about the land animals, and this living creature would be what? All land animals. Then he gets a little bit more specific about what they are: cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth, each according to its kind, and it was so. So we see the living creatures, that's all land animals. We see cattle, creeping things, beasts of the earth included here in verse 25. "And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and God saw that it was good." So we see the creation of all the land animals. Would that include dinosaurs? Sure it would. They were land animals. There were some sea animals that I guess technically aren't dinosaurs, but we call them dinosaurs, that were created the day before, day 5. But all of these big dinosaurs, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and I used to think the Brontosaurus was a dinosaur, but evidently he's not a dinosaur anymore. They renamed him. Different. You know, the Stegosaurus, the Triceratops, all these things that we saw pictures of wandering around on the earth that we see in the movies, they were all made day 6. They were part of this group of animals made on day 6. But look what else was made day 6. In verse 26, "Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. That God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And God said, "See, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. And also to every beast of the field, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food." And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made. Indeed, it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the 6th day. So we have right there God's story. We have God's account of what happened on the 6th day. Dinosaurs and men. And all the other land animals were created that day. Any comments, anybody? I thought something was interesting here. The Hebrew word there for creeping thing is, I'm probably not going to pronounce it right, but it's remus. R-E-M-E-S. What it's spelled. You know what that means? According to Strong's dictionary, it means a reptile or any other rapidly moving animal. It's dinosaur. I think everybody's pretty much universally agreed that they were reptiles. They were reptiles. So we have creeping things here, probably more of the smaller varieties, kind of the picture I get there's the creeping things. And then the beast, that would be something in my mind that'd be bigger. I may be wrong about that, but that's kind of the impression I get. But all of these things were made there on the same day that God created us. Any other comments or questions from anybody?
I may be totally incorrect, but I've always been under the impression that scientists or people who do the dinosaur thing will find one or two or a handful of bones, and then they'll construct a huge beast dinosaur, not really having enough to really do that. I'm one of the people, and I'm not sure about the dinosaur thing, okay? I mean, I just don't know that there's enough. At least I haven't studied it, so I may be showing my ignorance, but I just don't know that there's everything I have ever been told and read is one or two bones and they'll construct a T-Rex. Nobody knows if that's what it looked like or if it actually existed in that form or whatever. That's just, I'm one of those skeptics, okay?
That's okay, but I know exactly what you're talking about. They'll take some little fragment of a skeleton. A lot of times it seems like they construct a lot from that fragment that you think would just be guesswork.
Yeah.
And a lot of it probably is. But they have found full skeletons.
Okay.
They're kind of rare, but they have found some full skeletons. Anything else?
Well, it says in verse 21 of Genesis 1 that God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves with which the waters swarm. Just designating great sea creatures. When you think of that, you think, okay, the whale. That's about it. Yeah. So there had to be other creatures created that were great. And so he's using more adjectives describing exactly what he created.
Right. And there have been a lot of eyewitness accounts throughout history of things we might think of as sea serpents, sea monsters, that have that reptile look, that snakish look. Things like, I'm not saying he's real, like the Loch Ness Monster, but things of that nature. There have been accounts through history of people seeing those things.
Well, we still today see 30-foot crocodiles, and the Leviathan was similar to that, so who's to say it wasn't a crocodile back then?
Could have been. Yes, sir.
I'm a little bit with I'm not entirely convinced that the dinosaurs existed to the extent that we believe they did. If you do a little bit of research, you'll find out that the early days when people were finding these dinosaurs, there was great competition between each other for money and other things of that nature. Who knows? Some of these things could be fabricated. I'm not entirely convinced about that.
I'll tell you, anytime you have something where money's involved, you'll have hoaxes. That's one of the things that makes a study like this kind of difficult, is trying to determine what's a hoax and what's not. But like I say, there is a lot of evidence, and there's a lot of evidence usually, seems like in piles, okay? And you think about that, when the flood occurred, a lot of these dinosaurs died. One of the ways that these bones would have been preserved would have been for them to be covered up very quickly with mud or silt or something like that. Even most of your paleontologists would tell you a lot of this stuff got covered up with a localized flood, not a worldwide flood, but a localized flood. But we see perfect evidence with all these things being grouped together. You find a lot of dinosaur bones in one place, and we see things like that. When things begin to dry out after a flood, they kind of all wash into one mud hole, and that's what happened, I think, with a lot of these dinosaurs. Anything else? Yes, sir.
I went to a teacher training to get continued education units this past summer, and it was based on natural resources and everything in Mississippi. And they talked about one day that all birds are dinosaurs. Chickens are dinosaurs because they meet part of the description of their feet. They have scales on their legs. They lay eggs.
There's a similarity, but they're two different species.
And they're saying they are different species, but they don't descend from dinosaurs. They are dinosaurs.
Well,
So,
I can see how they might say they evolved from dinosaurs, but they're two distinct species. You've got a reptile and you've got a fowl. You've got a reptile and you've got a bird. And this idea of macroevolution, changing from one species to another species, we've got no proof, no evidence.
They get that from like the pterodactyls or whatever.
Pterodactyl was kind of like a bat, something like that.
And they're saying that bats are dinosaurs too.
You make a better argument for a bat maybe than a chicken. Anything else?
Well, I think when you're talking, when you're trying to use God's word to substantiate dinosaurs, if you're studying with someone, or you're trying to expand your knowledge, or you're debating, you've got to find some authority. So if you're going to use the Bible, it might be my authority, but it may not be someone else's authority. And you may be at an impasse because if you can't come to terms with what Scripture is and what truth is and what's authority, it's hard. I mean, we can go back and talk about miracles, and people say that didn't really happen, or it's just coincidence. It makes the dinosaurs that much more difficult to try to.
You might think of it like two teams showing up at the baseball field. One wants to play football, the other wants to play baseball. And there's no way that's going to work. You can't get agreed on a set of rules. If you can't get agreed on a set of rules, then you've got a problem. You've got an impasse. And most, I won't say most, but a lot of the scientific world rejects the Bible outright. They reject it outright. So we have a difficult time of coming up with a starting point where we can begin an argument.
Well, and that's where you can use the Bible to say, on this day, everything happened. On this day of substantiates, all the other huge events that have taken place over time, it does substantiate.
Yeah. And thankfully, the Bible does not leave us without any evidence to prove its accuracy. The Bible is accurate historically. It's accurate with everything it says. So we can go back and say, look, the Bible said this. Men didn't believe that. Men didn't believe we were all of one blood at one point. But we are. The Scriptures taught us that. When you look back at some of the laws that God gave the Israelites when they came out of the land of Moses, had a dead animal fall in a pot of water. Well, don't drink it. Dead animal fell in a lake, you still drink the water. Why was that? Because we know now that it would have been so diluted it would have caused any problems. But if you drink it out of a pot with a dead rat in it, you're going to get sick. God knew about germs long before we did. So we have something that we can start with a basis and say, look, it's not a blind faith. It's based on something. Anything else? Okay? Well, when we get over to, again, talking about what the Bible has to say about dinosaurs, you can't not mention what God said to Job. Okay? The things that God described to Job sound an awful lot like a dinosaur. Over in Job chapter 40. Job chapter 40. God, in my opinion, he's telling Job, look, I was powerful enough to do this. I knew this. He's going through this list of things to demonstrate how much smarter he is and how much more powerful he is than Job is. Job was beginning to question God. And God's telling you, you don't question me. So he's telling him about this behemoth that he made. Now, if this behemoth was not a real animal, if it wasn't something that Job was familiar with, then God's point would have been wasted on Job. So this was something that Job had to have known something about. But he starts in verse 15. He says, look now at the behemoth which I made along with you. Sound like day 6? I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. He's an herbivore. See now, his strength is in his hips, and his power in his stomach muscles. He's a big boy. He's strong. He's got strong hips, strong legs. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. His bones are like beams of bronze. Big boned. Big boned. His ribs like bars of iron. He is the first of the ways of God. Only he who made him can bring near his sword. This idea he's the first of the ways of God, I think it's the idea that he's the strongest of God's creation. Now, undoubtedly, he is describing a massive, powerful creature. A massive, powerful creature. Now, if you look through the commentaries, if you look through some of the translators, they seem to want to put this off as being the elephant or the hippopotamus for the most part. One of those two. And you think about it, that elephant, he's a big boy. He's big bones, he's strong. We've seen them take their head and push trees over. The hippopotamus, very similar. Big, strong animal. But there's one thing there, to me, that kind of rules them out. That tail of cedar. That don't look like a tail of cedar to me. Now, when we think about cedar and think about those cedar trees in the Bible, what pops into my mind are those cedars of Lebanon. These weren't like some of the little cedar trees we see growing around here. These were big, massive trees. They were used in shipbuilding. They were used for the masts of ships. They were even used in Solomon's temple. Those cedar trees were. So these were big, strong trees, not some little shrub, not some little bush. So we're describing a huge tail. Elephant doesn't fit. The hippo definitely doesn't fit. His is even smaller than the elephant's. I would not describe that as a tail like a cedar tree. I don't think you would either. But if you begin to think about it, there are some animals that would fit that description. Big, strong, powerful animals with a tail like a cedar tree. Yeah. This must have been an old picture. It still sells brontosaurus. I think they're what, a patasaurus now. They changed their name. Figured out they were just another one. And this would be what's called a sauropod. Now, a sauropod was just a dinosaur, walked on all 4 legs, had a long neck, had a long tail, ate grass, or ate vegetation. So this was what this would be. Here's just some other examples of it. And you see them compared in size with an elephant. I think any one of these would have fit that description of being an animal, a big, strong, massive animal with a tail like a cedar tree. So is this what God was talking about? Very well could have been. I can't think of anything else that would fit that description, would you? Any thoughts or any ideas on what God was talking about with Job here?
I don't see them laying under a lotus tree.
Lay next to one, maybe.
Covering their shade.
With big trees. Anything else? Okay. There's one other that God mentions to Job in chapter 41. Again, along these same lines, proving to Job that I am so powerful that I made these beasts that are so much more powerful than you are. And it's called the Leviathan. He says in verse 41, can you draw out the Leviathan with a hook, or snare his tongue with a line which you lower? In other words, Job, you go out fishing and you hook this thing, are you going to bring him in? No, too big. Now again, this is one of these things that the commentators and some of the translators kind of put off as a whale. They say it's a whale, but it really doesn't fit. Some say it's a crocodile. Again, it doesn't really fit what's being taught the way it's described. He goes on down through here in verse 7, can you fill his skin with harpoons, or his head with fishing spears? Something with an extremely tough hide, maybe something like a crocodile hide, something that was extremely tough. Verse 8, he says, lay your hand on him. Remember the battle. Never do it again. Now, you don't want to get tied up on these animals more than once in your life if you live to tell about it. This is a big, strong, dangerous animal. Down in verse 13, who can remove his outer coat? What does that talk about? I've seen people skin snakes. I've seen people skin alligators. What about crocodiles? Yeah, they skin crocodiles. They do that for bags, purses, boots, belts, all kinds of things, leather jackets. So this was even too strong to do that. He says, who can approach him with a double bridle? Are you going to go out and try to ride this thing? Absolutely not. Who can open the doors of his faith with his terrible teeth all around? His mouth and his jaws are too strong for you to even open them up. I'm trying to go through this a little bit quicker. Verse 18. Verse 18 and verses 19 and 20 and 21 gets a little interesting when it talks about this Leviathan. His sneezings flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning lights. Sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke goes out of his nostrils as from a boiling pot, and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and a flame goes out of his mouth. Ever heard of anything like that? You heard of a fire-breathing dragon? It would not surprise me at all for this to be just exactly what it says it is. Okay? Some people will read this and they say, this is just a fantastic creature, some mythical creature that God is just making up. If that was the case, then it doesn't make the point he wants to make, which is, Job, I was so powerful, I made this. And this would have had to been something that Job would have been familiar with in order for Job to have understood the point. Yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to say in chapter 39, he's talking about animals that we know about, the ostrich and the horse. So why would he go from things that do exist to all of a sudden make-believe animals in the next two chapters?
Right.
That makes sense.
And people look at this and they think, well, fire breathing. God made the stars. Okay? He put them in place. You tell me he couldn't make an animal that could breathe fire? I don't think this one is still alive. I think he is probably extinct because we don't read about this or hear too much about this anywhere. But I think this animal actually existed. Question? Yes.
I'm gonna say there's a shrimp called the Mantis Shrimp that can see a lot more colors than we can, and also when it punches, it stores up energy in its claws, and it punches so fast that the water gets separated and rushes back in on itself, creating a cavitation bubble. And that temperature inside that bubble can be as hot as the surface temperature of the sun. So there are a lot of crazy animals on this planet.
Oh, there are.
Yeah,
Bombardier beetle, you know about the electric eel? You know, God has made some fantastic animals. There's no doubt about it. Any other comments?
Verse 30.
So,
Explain verse 30.
darts are regarded as straw. He laughs at the threat of javelins. They don't hurt him.
It says his underpants are like sharp potsherders. He's
verse,
like
okay.
a threshing sledge on fire.
Well, I think you've seen the underbelly of a snake. You know, it's got that big scale across there. It's probably something like that, except a lot stronger.
Leviathan's mentioned several times in
Underpants
the
is
Bible.
underparts.
So this is more like I think more like a sea serpent.
Yeah.
Okay, because he is something that evidently is in the water. Because you talk about fishing him out with a hook.
Yeah.
So this is something like a sea serpent. He said on earth in verse 33, there is nothing like him. He is a one of a kind. Any other comments or questions? So I think we see that the Bible does address these. And we've talked about before. The Bible doesn't use that word dinosaur. That's one of those words that come up in the 1800s. But we do hear that word dragon. And we hear that word through every culture on the face of the earth. Every culture on the face of the earth has some myth, has some legend, has some lore about dragons. And that very well could be traced back to dinosaurs. Anything else before we go on? Okay. So we see there's a stark contrast what the evolutionist believes and what the creationists believe, what the Bible teaches on this. But what does the archaeological evidence say? I'm gonna have a lot of time. We'll kind of get started into this. What does the evidence say? Let me ask you a quick question. Anybody in here, raise your hand. Is there anybody in here that knows what the pink fairy armadillo looks like? Do you?
A little bit.
Okay, we got one. Can any of the rest of you draw me a picture of it? Anybody else draw me a picture of the pink fairy armadillo? Well, why not? We've never seen it. We've never seen it, so I can't draw it. Well, I could. I've seen it. So. I could maybe not a very good picture of it, but I've seen it because I've got a picture of it. But if I was to show you a picture of it, then maybe you could come up with a drawing that looked kind of similar to it. That's an odd looking little critter. If I had described it to you and told you it's kind of an armadillo, got a little bit of an armadillo shell across the back of it, a little fuzz at the end of it, white fur, big claws, a little pink nose, you might have drawn something similar to it. But the only way that you could have drawn a picture of that is for you to have ever either have seen it or have somebody that had seen it describe it to you. Okay? You have to see it, or somebody that knows what it looks like tells you what it looks like. We might think of somebody who goes in as a sketch artist, and you go in and you describe the criminal to them, and they draw a picture of them. You could do something like that. But somebody had to lay eyes on this thing in order for it to be drawn. So that's what we have here with some of these, some of the artwork, some of this historical artwork that we have that depicts dinosaurs. I'm going to start off with one here, and this will probably be the only one we'll get to. And it's the Ica, not Inca, I-C-A, no N there, burial stones. I remember this from years ago. Brother David Bonner come and held a meeting for us, and it was about creation evidences. And this was one of the things he pointed out about dinosaurs, with these burial stones that were found in Peru. And these things were buried with people probably from about, around 1 AD on up to about 14 AD, somewhere in that time period. But what they were these stones that they had drawn very intricate pictures on. And along with these very intricate pictures, you saw pictures of dinosaurs. Now, as we talked about earlier, anytime there's money involved, you always get a little bit of fraud involved. You always get hoaxes involved. And there's one man that has about 11,000 of these things. He began to collect them. And no doubt some of them are frauds. I think it's pretty evidence. They examined some of them. They could see, saw marks in them. They were able to pick up blue paint in some of the creases that come off the saw marks off the hacksaw and different things. But a lot of them have also been looked at, and that patina is there. The patina is not only on the rock, but it's also in the cracks and in the etching as well, which means it's old. It's old. So 400 or 500 years old, 600 years old, well before we knew what a dinosaur looked like. So we didn't quite get through those. I've got a few more of those we'll show to you. So I appreciate all the comments and questions, and we'll start back about right here next week.
Not terribly yard, like a regular
That's so much South America.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.